The dust had barely settled on her husband's grave when Olivia Emerson discovered the bank had already foreclosed on their homestead outside Circleville, Utah Territory, and she had exactly $3 to her name and a 7-year-old son to feed. The year was 1878, and winter was coming fast to the high desert country. Olivia stood in the cramped room above the general store that now served as their home, looking down at Benjamin sleeping on the narrow cot they shared. His clothes were getting too small, the cuffs of his trousers riding up above his ankles, and she had no money to buy new ones. Her husband Thomas had been dead for 2 months, kicked in the head by a spooked horse, and the life they had built together had crumbled like sun-dried clay. She had found work quickly, driven by the desperate need to keep food in Benjamin's belly. By 5 each morning, she was at the boarding house on Main Street, stoking fires and preparing breakfast for the miners and ranch hands who paid 50 cents a night for a bed and 2 meals. The work left her hands red and chapped, her back aching from hauling water and scrubbing floors. But Mrs. Patterson paid her $4 a week, and Olivia could not afford to complain. At noon, she rushed across town to the dress shop where Mrs. Chen needed help with alterations and mending. The Chinese woman was kind but exacting, and Olivia's fingers were often stuck with pins by the end of her shift. $3 a week for 6 hours of squinting at tiny stitches in the dim light filtering through the shop's single window. Her third job started after she tucked Benjamin into bed each night. She took in laundry, washing and pressing shirts and linens for the saloon and the hotel, until her arms trembled with exhaustion. The money was inconsistent, depending on how many cowboys came to town, but it usually added another $2 or $3 to her earnings. $9 a week was barely enough. Their room cost $2, food another $4 if she was careful, and there was always something else needed. Soap, lamp oil, medicine when Benjamin caught a cough that rattled in his chest for 3 terrible weeks. Olivia learned to eat less so her son could eat more, learned to mend her own dresses until they were more patch than original fabric. The other women in town whispered about her, though whether in sympathy or judgment, Olivia could not always tell. She was only 25, still young, still handsome enough despite the shadows under her green eyes and the thinness of her face. Some thought she should remarry quickly, find another man to provide for her. But Olivia had loved Thomas deeply, and the wound of his loss was still too raw. Besides, what man would want a woman with nothing to offer but debt and a child? On a cold October morning, Olivia was scrubbing the boarding house's front steps when she first saw Ryan Yardley. He rode into town on a tall bay gelding, sitting easy in the saddle with the confidence of a man who had spent most of his life on horseback. He was perhaps 30, with dark hair that curled slightly over his collar and eyes the color of the mountains in late afternoon. He wore good boots and a well-made coat, and when he dismounted in front of the bank, he moved with the casual grace of someone comfortable in his own skin. Olivia watched him for only a moment before returning to her work. Rich men on fine horses had nothing to do with widows who scrubbed steps for a living, but Ryan Yardley noticed her. As he walked past on his way into the bank, he tipped his hat. "Morning, madam." Olivia looked up, startled. Most people barely saw her anymore, as if poverty had made her invisible. "Good morning," she managed. He smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it, not the calculating look some men gave her. Then he was gone, and Olivia told herself to stop being foolish. A man like that probably had a wife already, or a sweetheart waiting somewhere. She did not see him again for several days, though she heard the talk in town. Ryan Yardley owned the Double Y Ranch about 10 miles outside Circleville, a sprawling operation with good water and several thousand head of cattle. He was unmarried, which caused considerable excitement among the town's eligible young women and their mothers. He had built his ranch up from nothing over the past 8 years, and now he was one of the most prosperous ranchers in the valley. Olivia listened to the gossip with only half an ear as she hemmed a dress for the banker's daughter at Mrs. Chen's shop. Such a man was as far above her station as the moon. The following Sunday, she was walking back from the mercantile with Benjamin, carrying the few groceries she could afford when a voice called out behind her, "Mrs. Emerson, Madam." She turned to find Ryan Yardley approaching on foot, his hat in his hands. Up close, she could see that his face was weathered from years of sun and wind, with small lines at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he smiled. "Mr. Yardley," she said, surprised that he knew her name. "Can I help you? I hope you will forgive the presumption, but I have a proposition for you." He glanced at Benjamin, who was staring up at him with wide eyes. "A business proposition." Olivia felt her shoulders tense. She had heard propositions before from men who thought a widow would be desperate enough to compromise her virtue for money. "I am listening." "I need a housekeeper at my ranch, someone to cook and clean, manage the household. The work would be steady and you would have a cabin of your own for you and your son. I would pay $15 a month, plus room and board." Olivia stared at him, certain she had misheard. $15. "I know it is not a fortune, but the cabin is comfortable and there is good food. Your son would have space to run and play, fresh air." Ryan's voice was earnest, his eyes steady on hers. "I have been managing on my own for too long and the house shows it. I need someone capable, and everyone I have asked in town speaks highly of your work." "I do not understand," Olivia said slowly. "Why me? There are other women who might want such a position." "Because you need it," Ryan said simply. "And because I have seen how hard you work, how you take care of your boy. That is the kind of person I want in my home." Benjamin tugged at her skirt. "Mama, could I have a dog if we lived on a ranch?" Ryan smiled down at him. "I have 3 dogs on the ranch right now. They are always looking for someone to throw sticks for them." Olivia's heart was beating fast. $15 a month was more than she made working 3 jobs, and she would not have to pay for rent or food. She could save money, perhaps eventually afford a small place of their own. Benjamin would have fresh air and space, not the cramped room above the store where he had to play quietly so as not to disturb the shopkeeper below. But moving to a ranch, alone with a man she did not know, even one who seemed honorable, was risky. People would talk. They would assume things, true or not. Ryan seemed to read her hesitation. "I would have one of my ranch hands and his wife move into the cabin nearest the main house," he said. "For propriety's sake. Mrs. Carson is a good woman. She could be a companion for you." It was as if he had anticipated every objection, thought through every detail. Olivia looked down at Benjamin, at his thin face and hopeful eyes, and made her decision. "When would you need me to start?" "As soon as you are able. I can send a wagon for your things tomorrow if that suits you." "It suits me," Olivia said, and felt as if she were stepping off a cliff into unknown air. The next day, everything she and Benjamin owned fit into 2 trunks and a carpet bag. It was a sobering reminder of how much they had lost. Mrs. Chen pressed a jar of preserves into her hands as a parting gift, and Mrs. Patterson from the boarding house gave Benjamin a peppermint stick. The shopkeeper seemed relieved to have his room back. Ryan arrived with a sturdy wagon just after noon. He loaded their belongings himself, then helped Olivia and Benjamin up onto the seat. The ride out to the Double Y took nearly 2 hours, following a rough road that cut through sage-covered hills and stands of juniper. The October air was crisp and clear, the sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Benjamin chattered excitedly, pointing out hawks circling overhead and asking Ryan 100 questions about the ranch. Ryan answered each one with patience and good humor, and Olivia found herself studying him from the corner of her eye. His hands on the reins were strong and capable, scarred from years of hard work. He spoke to Benjamin as if the boy's questions mattered, not with the dismissiveness some men showed toward children. When the ranch came into view, Olivia caught her breath. The house was larger than she had expected, a solid 2-story structure built of wood and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around 2 sides. There were several outbuildings, a large barn and corrals where horses moved lazily in the afternoon sun. Everything spoke of care and prosperity, of a man who took pride in what he had built. "The cabin is just there," Ryan said, pointing to a small but well-maintained building about 50 yards from the main house. Smoke curled from its chimney. "I had Carlos and his wife Maria move in this morning, like I promised. Their regular cabin is being repaired after a tree fell on it in a storm last month, so the timing worked out well." He drew the wagon to a stop in front of the main house. 3 dogs of various sizes and breeds came bounding up, tails wagging furiously. Benjamin laughed with delight as the smallest one, a terrier mix, jumped up to lick his face. "That one is Biscuit," Ryan said, swinging down from the wagon. "The big one is Bear and the spotted one is Patch. They are friendlier than they are useful, but they are good company." He helped Olivia down, his hand warm and steady on hers. For a moment they stood close together, and Olivia was suddenly aware of him in a way that made her heart skip. She stepped back quickly, smoothing her skirts. "Let me show you the house," Ryan said. The interior was clean but sparse, the domain of a man who lived alone and saw no need for decoration. The kitchen was large and well-equipped, with a good stove and a hand pump for water right at the sink. The parlor had a stone fireplace and sturdy furniture. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms, and Ryan showed her to the largest. "This was my parents' room before they passed," he said. "I have been using one of the smaller rooms. I thought you might want this one for you and Benjamin." Olivia looked around at the spacious room with its large bed and dresser, the window that looked out over the valley. It was finer than any place she had slept since her marriage. "It is too much," she protested. "I am only a housekeeper." "You are the person who will make this house a home," Ryan said quietly. "Please take it." That first evening, Olivia cooked dinner for the 2 of them and Benjamin in the big kitchen, using the supplies Ryan had already stocked. She made a simple stew and biscuits, but Ryan ate as if it were a feast, thanking her twice and complimenting the meal. After dinner, Benjamin played with the dogs on the porch while Ryan showed Olivia the rest of what would be her domain. The pantry was well stocked but disorganized, the linens were in need of mending, and there was dust in corners that had not seen a broom in months. "I know it is a lot," Ryan said almost apologetically. "I have let things go." "I have handled worse," Olivia assured him. "I will have it set to rights soon enough." As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Carlos and Maria came up to the main house to introduce themselves. They were in their 40s, warm and friendly, and Maria hugged Olivia as if they were already friends. "I am so glad you are here," Maria said in lightly accented English. "This poor man has been living like a hermit for too long. He needs someone to take care of him properly." Ryan laughed, embarrassed. "I have been managing just fine." "You have been surviving," Maria corrected. "That is not the same thing." That night, after Benjamin fell asleep almost before his head hit the pillow, exhausted from the excitement and fresh air, Olivia stood at the window of her new room and looked out at the darkened valley. The stars were so bright here, away from town, that they seemed close enough to touch. She could hear the distant lowing of cattle and the whisper of wind through the trees. For the first time in months, she felt something that might have been hope. The days fell into a rhythm. Olivia rose before dawn to start breakfast, cooking for Ryan and any of the ranch hands who were working close enough to the house to come in for meals. She cleaned and organized, mended and laundered, and slowly brought order to the neglected household. Benjamin thrived in the open space, following Carlos around and learning about horses and cattle, coming home each evening sun-browned and happy in a way he had not been since his father died. Ryan was a good employer, patient and appreciative. He never demanded, only asked. When he came in from a long day of work, he always thanked her for the meal, complimented something she had done. He played with Benjamin before bed, teaching him to whittle and telling him stories about the ranch. Olivia tried to maintain a proper distance, to remember that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. But it was difficult when Ryan was so unfailingly kind, when he fixed the loose hinge on her bedroom door without being asked, when he brought her wildflowers once because he thought they might brighten the kitchen. It was even more difficult when she caught herself watching him, noticing the way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he lifted something heavy, the sound of his laugh, the gentleness in his hands when he handled a newborn calf. She had not expected to feel this way again. Had not wanted to. Loving someone meant risking the terrible pain of loss, and she had barely survived losing Thomas. But Ryan was not Thomas, and what she was beginning to feel for him was different from what she had felt for her late husband. Thomas had been her childhood sweetheart, familiar and comfortable. Ryan was a mystery she was slowly unraveling, a man of depths she had not expected. He read books in the evening, poetry and history. He spoke Spanish fluently from years of working alongside his Mexican and Tejano ranch hands, treating them with the same respect he showed everyone. He had built his ranch through hard work and fair dealing, and people respected him. 6 weeks after she arrived at the Double Y, the first snow fell. Olivia woke to find the world transformed, everything white and pristine. Benjamin was beside himself with excitement, begging to go out and play. Ryan bundled him into a too large coat and took him out to build a snowman before the morning work began. And Olivia watched from the kitchen window with a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the stove. When Ryan came back in, stamping snow from his boots, his cheeks were red from the cold and his eyes were bright. He caught Olivia watching and smiled at her, and something passed between them, a moment of connection that made her breath catch. "Thank you," she said softly, "for being so good to him." "He is a fine boy," Ryan said, moving closer. "You have done well with him, Olivia." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cold. "I should start breakfast," she said, needing to break the moment before she did something foolish. But Ryan did not move back. "Olivia, I want you to know that you are not just a housekeeper to me. You and Benjamin, you have made this place feel like a home. I come in from work looking forward to dinner, to conversation, to the sound of laughter in these rooms. I have not felt that in a very long time." Olivia's hands were shaking. "Ryan, I do not think we should. I am not asking you for anything," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. You matter to me. You both do." He left then, heading out to start the day's work, and Olivia stood in the kitchen with her heart pounding. She knew she should be afraid, should protect herself from the possibility of more pain. But instead, all she felt was a fierce, yearning hope. Winter deepened, and with it, Olivia's feelings. She tried to fight it, reminding herself of all the reasons this was unwise. She was still in mourning, still grieving Thomas. It had been less than 6 months since she became a widow. What would people think? But the heart, she was learning, did not care about propriety or proper mourning periods. The heart wanted what it wanted, Ryan was equally careful, equally proper. He never touched her beyond what was necessary, never said anything that crossed the line from employer to something more. But Olivia could feel his eyes on her sometimes when she worked, could hear the warmth in his voice when he spoke to her. The tension between them grew like the snow drifts outside, quiet and inexorable. It all came to a head on a bitter January night when a blizzard struck with sudden fury. Ryan had been out checking on the cattle in the far pastures and did not return when expected. As the hours passed and the storm worsened, Olivia's worry grew into something close to panic. She had already lost one man she cared for. She could not bear to lose another. When Ryan finally burst through the door near midnight, covered in snow and half frozen, Olivia let out a cry of relief and rushed to him without thinking. She helped him out of his ice-crusted coat, her hands shaking as she touched his face, his arms, assuring herself that he was real and whole. "I am all right," Ryan said, his voice rough from the cold. "I had to help deliver a calf in the storm. I should have sent word somehow. I am sorry." "I thought you were dead," Olivia whispered, and suddenly she was crying, all the fear and worry pouring out. "I thought I had lost you too." Ryan's arms came around her, pulling her close. "I am here. I am safe." Olivia looked up at him, at his dear face with melting snow in his hair, and knew she could not fight this anymore. "I cannot lose you," she said. "Ryan, I know I should not feel this way. It is too soon, it is improper, but I cannot help it." He kissed her. His lips were cold at first, but they warmed against hers, and the kiss was everything, gentle and fierce and full of longing. Olivia kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, 7 months of grief and loneliness and desperate hope pouring into this single perfect moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryan cupped her face in his hands. "I have wanted to do that since the day I met you," he said. "I love you, Olivia. I know it is fast. I know there are 1,000 reasons we should wait, but I love you. I love your strength and your courage and the way you love your son. I love the way you have made my house into a home. I love everything about you." "I love you too," Olivia said, the words tumbling out. "I did not want to. I tried not to, but I do." They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other while the blizzard raged outside, and Olivia felt something she had not felt since Thomas died. She felt whole. They married in March when the snow was melting, and the first spring flowers were beginning to push through the earth. It was a small ceremony in the church in Circleville, with Maria and Carlos as witnesses and Benjamin standing proudly between them. The town gossips had plenty to say about the hasty marriage, about whether it was proper for a widow to remarry so quickly. But Olivia found that she did not care. She was tired of living her life according to other people's rules. Ryan moved her things into his room, the room he had always used, and gave Benjamin the large bedroom that had been hers. They were a family now, in truth and not just in feeling. The wedding night was tender and sweet, Ryan patient with Olivia's nervousness. It had been so long since she had been with a man, and never with anyone but Thomas. But Ryan made her feel cherished, desired, and when he made love to her, it was with a gentleness that brought tears to her eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, seeing her tears. "I am happy," she said, and it was true. "I did not think I would ever be this happy again. I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay happy," Ryan promised, and kissed her until she forgot everything but the feeling of his hands on her skin, his body moving with hers. Life at the Double Y settled into a new rhythm, one that included Olivia as wife and partner, not just housekeeper. Ryan consulted with her about ranch decisions, valued her opinions. She learned the business of ranching, helped with the account books, and made the house a place where the hands enjoyed coming for meals and conversation. Benjamin flourished. calling Ryan Pa within a few months of the wedding. Ryan never tried to replace Thomas in the boy's memory, but he gave him something Thomas could not: a living, present father figure who taught him to ride and rope, who listened to his dreams and encouraged his interests. In the summer, Olivia discovered she was with child. She was terrified at first, remembering the difficulty of Benjamin's birth, the pain and fear. But Ryan was so tender, so attentive, that her fear gradually eased into excitement. "A brother or sister for Benjamin," Ryan said, his hand on her still flat stomach. "We are going to need more bedrooms soon. Are you already planning to fill the house with children?" Olivia teased. "As many as you want to give me," Ryan said seriously. "I want a big family, Olivia. I want this house full of life and noise and love, if you want that too." "I want that," Olivia said, and meant it. The pregnancy was easier than her first had been, perhaps because she was not struggling to survive on too little food and too much work. Ryan insisted she rest, hired a girl from town to help with the heavier housework. He rubbed her swollen feet in the evenings and read to her when she was too uncomfortable to sleep. In February of 1880, on a cold, clear night, Olivia gave birth to a son. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when she was afraid, but Maria was there to help, and Ryan refused to leave her side even when Maria suggested it was not proper for a man to be present. "This is my wife and my child," Ryan said firmly. "I am staying." When the baby finally came, red-faced and squalling, Ryan cut the cord with hands that shook. He held his son with a look of wonder on his face, and when he placed the baby in Olivia's arms, there were tears on his cheeks. "He is perfect," Ryan whispered. "You are amazing." They named him Thomas, after Olivia's first husband, because Ryan said it was right to honor the man who had loved her first. Benjamin was fascinated by his tiny brother, wanting to hold him constantly, and Olivia's heart felt so full she thought it might burst. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered, and with it, their family. Olivia gave birth to a daughter 2 years after Thomas, a little girl they named Sarah, who had her father's eyes and her mother's smile. Another son followed, then twin girls who kept everyone in the house running. They built additions to the house to accommodate the growing family, and the rooms rang with laughter and the chaos of children. Benjamin grew into a fine young man, eventually taking over much of the ranch management alongside Ryan. Little Thomas was quieter, more studious, and Ryan encouraged his love of books, talking about perhaps sending him to university someday. Through it all, Olivia and Ryan's love only deepened. They had their disagreements, as all couples did, but they faced them together. Ryan never raised his voice to her, never made her feel small or less than. He treated her as an equal partner in all things, and she loved him more with each passing year. On their 10th anniversary, Ryan took her on a picnic to the place where he had first seen her, scrubbing steps in front of the boarding house in Circleville. The town had grown in the intervening years, but the boarding house was still there. "I saw you and I knew," Ryan said as they sat together on a blanket, watching the sunset. "I knew you were strong and capable and exactly what I needed in my life. I offered you that job because I wanted you close, wanted a chance to know you. You saved my life," Olivia said softly. "I do not know what would have become of Benjamin and me if you had not." "You saved mine too," Ryan said. "I was just existing before you came. You taught me how to truly live." He kissed her there as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, and Olivia thought about the desperate, frightened widow she had been, working herself to exhaustion just to survive. She had never imagined she could have this life, this love, this abundance of blessings. Years passed. The children grew and started families of their own. Benjamin married a sweet girl from a neighboring ranch and gave them grandchildren. Thomas went to university and became a teacher, returning to Circleville to educate the town's children. Sarah married a lawyer and moved to Salt Lake City, but she visited often with her brood of rowdy boys. Through it all, Ryan and Olivia grew old together. Their hair turned gray, their steps slowed, but their love remained constant. They sat together on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sun set over the valley, and Olivia marveled at how much her life had changed. She thought sometimes of Thomas, her first love, and mourned him still in quiet moments. But she had learned that the heart was big enough to hold both grief and joy, that you could honor the past while embracing the future. In the spring of 1910, Ryan fell ill. The doctor from town came and shook his head gravely, saying there was nothing to be done. Ryan was 72, had lived a good long life, but his heart was giving out. Olivia sat by his bedside day and night, holding his hand, remembering everything they had shared. Their children came, and their grandchildren, filling the house one last time with the life and love Ryan had always wanted. On a warm May evening, with Olivia beside him and the window open to let in the smell of spring flowers, Ryan squeezed her hand weakly. "I am not afraid," he said, his voice thin but steady. "I have had the best life a man could ask for, all because of you. And I because of you," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Ryan Yardley. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "Take care of our family," Ryan said. "Tell them I love them. Tell them to be as happy as we were." "I will," Olivia promised. Ryan smiled, his eyes drifting closed. "My beautiful Olivia," he murmured. "Thank you for saying yes to a lonely rancher all those years ago." "Thank you for asking," she said. He died peacefully, his hand in hers, and Olivia held him and wept for the man who had given her everything, who had taken a desperate widow with nothing and made her a partner in a life full of love and joy. She lived another 8 years, long enough to see her great-grandchildren born, long enough to know that the family she and Ryan had built would continue long after she was gone. She remained sharp and active, managing the ranch with Benjamin until he insisted she slow down and let him handle things. On a summer afternoon, in 1918, Olivia sat on the porch where she had spent so many evenings with Ryan. The valley spread out before her, green and gold in the late afternoon light. She could hear children's laughter from somewhere in the house, could smell dinner cooking. The Double Y was still thriving, still home to the family she and Ryan had created. She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face, and thought she heard Ryan's voice on the wind, calling her name. When her youngest son found her an hour later, she was gone, a peaceful smile on her face. They buried her next to Ryan on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky as blue as her wedding day. The children gathered for the funeral, and the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren, 3 generations of the family that had started with a desperate widow and a rancher who had seen something special in her. They told stories about Olivia and Ryan, about the love that had sustained them through joy and sorrow, about the legacy they had left. Benjamin, now an old man himself, stood at his mother's grave and remembered the day they had arrived at the Double Y, poor and scared and hoping for a new beginning. He remembered how hard his mother had worked, how much she had sacrificed, and how Ryan had given her not just a job but a life. They were happy, he said to his own children and grandchildren. No matter what challenges they faced, they were happy because they had each other. That is what they would want us to remember, to strive for in our own lives. The Double Y continued for generations after, passed down through the family, and the story of Olivia and Ryan became part of its foundation. People spoke of the widow who had worked 3 jobs to feed her son, and the rancher who had offered her a better life, and how that simple act of kindness had blossomed into a love story that lasted a lifetime. In the house that Ryan had built and Olivia had made into a home, new families lived and loved and filled the rooms with laughter. The valley remained beautiful, the cattle still grazed the hills, and the legacy of 2 people who had found each other in the harsh landscape of the Old West lived on. Because some love stories, the truest ones, do not end when life does. They echo forward through time in the children and grandchildren, in the values passed down and the memories cherished. They become part of the land itself, woven into the fabric of a place and a family. Olivia Emerson had arrived at the Double Y with nothing but a son to protect and a fierce will to survive. She had left it with a legacy of love that would endure for generations, proof that even in the hardest times, even when all seems lost, hope and happiness can be found in the most unexpected places. And somewhere in whatever comes after this life, 2 souls walk together through eternal valleys, hand in hand, their love as strong and true as it had been in life, a light that would never fade, a story that would never truly end.